Hey there, it's Ben from patternprofits.net. I wanted to bring you a brief update and watch list into the holiday shortened week. We're looking at the cues here. Alpha trends anchored VWAP off of the February high. You can see we closed just above that level with the big rally late on Friday. The inverse head and shoulders pattern we'd been watching is getting quite sloppy here. I would say that the more important levels is 324.15 swing high here, and then also the March low. I think for the intermediate term trend, it's either a push above this level or an undercut or retest of these lows before we get a bigger trend. In the meantime, we're just kind of chopping around in here below the 50-65 cloud, kind of right there at the 10-20. So just chopping around in there. Let's get right into some of the watch list ideas. You guys are familiar with this one. Again, thank you to Brian Shannon for the alpha trends. Anchored VWAP and VWAP pinch here. It's working to perfection. We've seen several tests of resistance off of the anchored VWAP off of the high. Support has come in several times now. Anchored VWAP off of the low. And here we are again. See if we can make some progress early next week and get another run back up here, or if this does finally crack and roll over. You're right at 65 MA cloud support, so we'll see if this can make some progress to the upside once again. I also have MWK. This is another one where anchored VWAP off of the November low. We found support a couple times here, and now we're right back to that level. Looked like it was going to roll over late on Friday, but that late day strength saved it, and it was able to reclaim that level. And now we'll see if it can make any progress late next week, or if this, like most growth stocks, and there's a bunch of them, they've started to roll over and crack below those anchored VWAP off the lows. We'll see how it plays out with Mohawk. I also want to discuss Align. You guys know I'm a big fan of using the alpha trends anchored VWAP off of power earnings gaps. And what I want you to keep in mind, and you can see it well here with Align, you had the power earnings gap prices below, but I never took off the anchored VWAP from the prior power earnings gap. So the one that we had from the prior report ended up acting as support. It's still trying to hold that level. So what I want you to keep in mind is when you're using these for power earnings gaps, go ahead and leave them on the prior one or two, depending on how strong the earnings gap was. But a lot of times when you get weakness at the most recent one, price does end up finding support at the prior one. And I have a few of these, just to show you as an example. DGII is another one. Now this one, you had the big power earnings gap back here, and that's where it's finding support now. You had resistance here, found support here, support again here, support again here. The most recent power earnings gap price, like so many, has rolled over, but again, it's finding support from that power earnings gap a couple reports ago. So leave them on your charts. Don't delete them because they often come back in play. Here's another one, Zillow. Again, power earnings gap from back here, support here, and now finding support there again. The most recent power earnings gap, price has rolled over and is below, but it found support from the prior ones. So go ahead and leave those power earnings gap alpha trends anchored VWAPs on your chart because they may often serve as support and help you a little later on. This is CRTO. We've discussed this one. It still can't make up its mind whether it wants to get out of this triangle, but it did close Friday right at the volume shelf. And bring this over. At the volume shelf point of control, it's peeked its head out of this triangle a couple times but hasn't been able to make any progress. We'll watch early next week, see if this can finally make some progress, but it is one that can be managed very tightly here with the anchored VWAP off the power earnings gap. Volume shelf point of control, like I said, is right there, so risk can be kept very, very tight. Another one, watching WDFC. This is another power earnings gap play here, and we have volume shelf point of control just above, kind of descending trend line here, reclaimed anchored VWAP off of the power earnings gap late on Friday. So looking to see if it can push through here. You know, the Q's well off the highs, but the S&P 500 had a new closing high on Friday. So looking at some of the components of the S&P 500, not a bad idea going forward. Also have FedEx. We had a power earnings gap and reclaimed late on Friday. You have a pivot here above 282.93. That's the power earnings gap high. So that pivot in play. You had the reclaim of the power earnings gap anchored VWAP. So this one on strength may offer an opportunity early next week. I don't have a lot on my watch list. There's just not a lot to get excited about. But one other one that I'm watching is C's. Held up very well. You had the power earnings gap here. Price now just below the high at 52.96. Depending on how you like to play these, either a breakout through 52.96 on big volume, or if it's, you know, comes back in a little bit early in the week on weakness, may have another opportunity at the volume shelf point of control and anchored VWAP. But this is one that is consolidating very nicely up high and may be worth keeping an eye on early next week. Like I said, I do not have much on my watch list for early next week, but we'll keep an eye on things, and I'll share over on FinTwit if anything else should catch my attention. I hope you guys have a great holiday trading week, and I will see you over on FinTwit.